I'm Catherine White, show mastermind of the weekly Friday Power Lunch, bringing you the guests, the issues, the action, and amplifying these Virginia grassroots all in this room across Virginia, all the issues to get things done and to make politics fun. So let's get to it. It's February 4th, 2022. Welcome to the Friday Power Lunch. Let's meet our guests. Today, our topic is going to be Racism Hurts Everyone, Joining Forces to Fight Back Now. We've got a lot of powerhouse going on in here. And the room looks so great. So great to see everybody. And we packed the Power Lunch today with some great guests. So let's introduce them. First up, Tammarrah Addison. Tammarrah, how are you, friend? Hey,
I am good.
Poetess, author, creativity coach, and creative arts educator. And we're here for the long game, are we?
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Good to see you. And I'm glad you're on lunch break.
Yes, I am.
Perfect for the Power Lunch. Well, we look forward to your special poem today, and especially the celebration of Black History Month.
Thank you.
Awesome, bringing it. All right. And like I said, we're bringing you powerhouses this Friday. Dr. Wes Bellamy, author of When White Supremacy Knocks, Fight Back, How White People Can Use Their Privilege and How Black People Can Use Their Power. Welcome, Wes. How are things going over there?
All is
How
well.
are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, where are you at? Are you in Charlottesville?
No, I'm actually in North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina right now.
Oh, very cool. It's raining here, so hopefully you got some sunshine.
Yeah, it's about 70 and sunny.
Well, we'll try to forgive you for that one. I'm so excited to have you here today. So thank you for being in the room. And of course, up next, Jennifer Carol Foy, candidate for Senate District 33 and former delegate. And actually also, let's add to your resume, graduate of VMI, lawyer. What else do you want to add on there?
Foster mom, Virginia State University, HBCU grad, twin mom. Okay, so
twin mom.
Yes.
No one can. That's hard to beat, twin mom. So, well, I'm glad to see you here. And is all things going for you?
Everything's going well. Still have two unpotty trained 4-year-olds, but we're going to work through it, right? Can't win in everything. So,
yeah, it's like you count your victories.
That's right.
For sure, with that one. Okay, well, so glad to see you, Jennifer. And next up, we have Adele McClure, Executive Director of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus and candidate for HD2, another candidate. So great to see you. How are you doing?
Great to see you too. I'm doing well. I actually am here and then also have session in my ear, so I'm listening.
Oh, well, I'm so glad. Yeah, you'll be the direct link into session because today a lot of our topics have to do with getting right into some of these crazy bills that we see going on. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. As we say, let's get down to some show business. And we also have a subscription for our show. You could become a patron. You could support us. And what does that mean? It means for just a small cost, $5, $10, you can support our work. And it really kind of empowers us to do this every week. So if you like what you see, become a patron. So thank you for that. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel and put a thumbs up on videos. And I have to tell you, don't just subscribe to it. I was in there the other day looking at our YouTube. Oh my gosh, we have two really great pieces. One from 2020 on Real Talk About Race, and also the rural ground game kind of information. Go check out that old videos. It never gets old. And in fact, we still continue these conversations today. So just don't click on it, go watch it. So we hope you will. And follow us on social media, and also the Badass Briefings and the Tuesday Tidbits will be put in the chat for you because we collect all the information. You just sit back and have to read it. So how awesome is that? All right. And of course, the favorite part, stick around for the after chat. All right. So let's introduce the team. And if you are using closed captioning and you have an issue, just look in the chat. We have some directions if you want to turn it off. So hello, team. Stare, Ambassador Buzz, Robin, Show Wizard, Rosemary, Shortstop, Heidi Dragnip, Twitter Guru, and Jalicia, Show Dazzler. Hello, team. How are you feeling for Black History Month and the first kickoff for February? All around.
We're good. We're ready.
We're ready. So yeah, tell me what's on your mind. Let's open this up for just a quick intro. We have a great show. How are you feeling about it?
Sarah, you
Jaleesa?
want to go? Because I know.
We're talking
just
just
Black History
just you
Month.
and
We're already day 4 in the Black History Month, and I think we're bringing it. And I'm really excited that we have some actual heroes in the room with us, our guests that are going to share their phenomenal work that is going to be a part, will not even be a part, is a part of Black history. So look, Power Lunch, we're coming in hard for the first week of February. So excited to be here.
Yeah, coming in hard, looking good. Show Dazzler is going to do one of the first kickoffs today, but we first have to get down to business with our friend and news anchor from the grassroots, Louisa. It's a lot of Louisa Borowski here to tell us about the grassroots update. How are you doing, friend?
I am good, Catherine. You know, we are slogging through this General Assembly session. It is moving quickly and yet at the same time is exhausting. So I'm here to share sort of where we are, what is happening in Richmond, and ways that you can be helpful and supportive. So unfortunately, some of the things that we've seen over the last week are a lot of good progressive bills have gotten killed. They've gotten killed in different committees. And I've heard from some of our activists, you know, it's hard. It's hard sitting through a session and having fantastic legislators talking about these bills and then them getting, you know, put to the side. So there are still some bills that we have that are going strong, and we need your support to ask our delegates and our senators to vote for them. The ones that are ones that we would like to pass are still, we have the one on reforming the recall process that has been sent to the Senate Finance Committee, and they need to hear from us so that they know to support it and send it to the Senate floor. We also have another bill on pay parity for public defenders that the Senate is considering. And finally, we have one on protecting families from utility shutoffs during a crisis, and that's being considered in the House. However, a lot of what we need to do is play defense. And so I'm going to also share a number of bills with you in the chat where you can do a one-click call to action to let our legislators know to vote no on these bills. And because there are so many bills, it is helpful for us to highlight them and say, look, if you haven't paid a lot of attention, this is why this bill is a problem. And so a lot of these have to do with the environment. There are a number of Republican-supported bills that are trying to roll back, you know, the advances that we've made in the last couple of years. We need to make sure that they don't do that. And then we also have a couple that are trying to roll back our protections related to health and COVID-19, which of course we don't want to do. So I will share all of that in the chat. All of these have easy one-click calls to action. So you just have to click on the link and it should pop up an email for you to send to all of the right folks. You can personalize it if you want, but if any of the legislators that are on that email happen to be your legislator, it's also great if you send them a personal email noting that you're a constituent and adding your address. So we are still in the fight. We've got until February 15th as crossover. So we are trying to get these last bills the support they need to be able to make it to that crossover part of this session.
Right. So the top bill today, if there's something we need to do, what would you say we need, you know, to really focus on?
It's a really tough choice, right? Because I've worked on the recall bill. So I personally, having heard from both our Commonwealth attorneys and our school district members who are suffering from this very, very old,
right,
not, you know, up-to-date recall process,
right,
that is really important. But secondly, you know, anything to help families during utility shutoffs is really important. The only downside is that's going through the House of Representatives, and in the House we have less power. It's a little bit harder for us to get traction there this year.
No, and I agree. And there's that bipartisan, obviously, with that, there's a possibility with the utilities, possibly you have Republicans and Democrats working together. So that's always good.
So with all of these, a lot of the bills that we're passing should be considered bipartisan. The only downside is that because there is the history of legislators working together, in some cases, there's a little bit of a, oh, well, you didn't really take my bill into consideration last year, so I'm not going to take yours into consideration this year. I wish that was not the case, but you know, pettiness is everywhere.
Well,
Right.
I'm just thinking we'll send them to Jennifer Foy's. If she's potty training 4-year-olds, maybe that's what we need to do down in the House legislature, right? Do some
It is-
potty training.
It's a challenge, right?
All
But
right.
again, at least
Yeah.
we're getting this information out there. The last thing to note is we do have a coalition meeting coming up on Sunday, and I will
Awesome.
put the RSVP link. Jennifer Carroll Foy will be there with us, as well as Congressman Don Beyer. So please,
Oh,
if you are
very nice.
interested, join.
We love it. We love celebrity guests, as we say. All right. So speaking of celebrity guests, we're doing a workshop tomorrow. If Josh Stanfield's in the room, bring him up for a minute, because we have a reorganization workshop. What the heck is the Virginia Dems reorganization anyway? A view from the grassroots up. And this is going to be a lot about learning about the structure, the reorg, and bolstering the party. And I'm going to say to you, I've tried to read and understand some of this, and it is really kind of crazy. So I'm hoping if Josh is here, can we spotlight him, or he's maybe not?
Josh doesn't have video, so it's all you, Catherine.
It's all me. All right. Well, that's not bad. Okay. Me and Luis can do this.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be tomorrow. Tune in at 9:00. And we have 9 to 11, but we will just use the time, mostly a strong hour and 15 time for Q&A, and you won't want to miss it. We also will make it fun. And it really is, because learning is empowerment, and we need to get involved wherever we can. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that
absolutely. And I think most importantly, we're doing a lot of work from the outside as the grassroots, but it is also important to change the system. And part of changing the system is being part of this reorg. And so understanding it, figuring out how you can get involved is really, it's going to be important going forward. So really glad that you guys are doing this workshop.
Yeah, it is, because it's like you said, for 5 years, we spent just sort of running right and electing, doing all this work. And now we've got to learn how the party works, so then we can really work better together. So I appreciate that, Louisa. And I want to move on, getting out of the grassroots and getting into some really great business with Tammarrah Addison. There she is, looking good. How are you doing for Black History Month and celebration? Let's start out with some good. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling great. Thank you guys for this opportunity to be here to highlight some great things that African Americans are doing, not just the month of February, but 365 and 366 during the leap year. But thank you.
Yeah, well, it's exciting too. You're a teacher, and which is important. And I'm sure today some of the subject matter, what you're dealing with, I mean, to be able to teach about history, which I think is kind of, somebody did a great little, almost a parody of like, how do you, with these bills that are trying to block talking about history, that what are they going to skip just to March, like really leap through it. I mean, this is really serious, this serious discussion. So we're glad you're bringing it. And I just want to tell everybody that we've commissioned a poem you're going to do for us today, really bringing it, talking a lot about our work.
Yes.
And the long game, and why we have to really understand that this is not just like one-offs that look 400 years of our history in this country. It is definitely feels like a long game. For sure.
Yes. Thank you for allowing me to commission that poem for you guys, for your organization. I appreciate you guys sitting down with me. That's one of the things that I do as a creativity coach. I sit down with organizations, we talk about it, and I write a personalized poem for you. I facilitate things as well, but this isn't the first time I work with you. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, we want to light up the room. We want to light up and get people going. It's kind of dreary here. Wes is over there by the beach with the sun, but let's bring the light into this conversation. Everybody get ready. Introducing the poem, as we say, The Long Game.
I believe there is one statement motto all trailblazers had to say before they transform into the power beings they are today. It is these words that are truly underrated. It has given ordinary to extraordinary beings the stamina, the grit to stand before giants and face them. It is these words I believe we utter before temporary defeat. The words we say with temerity when they want us to retreat. The words we will repeat and echo through all halls and chambers as we walk through them again, bringing a sea of blue. Together, me, us, you. We say these words when they don't want us to persist, try to make us resist, on us like a moth to a flame. we stand and say, we are here for the long game. I said, we're here for the long game. And we believe Stacey Abrams used these words too. She spearheaded the charge to turn Georgia blue. She didn't conceive at the election, didn't see that loss as a rejection. She had a plan, refusing to give in to the man. She led from the outside, getting more people to vote, instilled hope. She said, our time is now. Letting the naysayers know, tricks are for kids, silly rabbits. We got here because of habit, perseverance. We can't be tamed. They need to realize we are here for the long game. Look at us. The diversity, the skills, the wit. We got the ability to try and try again. Like the little engine that could, we don't quit. We had a trying time this year. Tunnel vision at its best. We were singing Winnie Houston, then we almost have it all. Losing sight of the goal, but we came and we studied and we're ready for the test. So we're back on track. We needed that diversion because now we're bringing the whole team back into the huddle. What we're about to do as Nova, Virginia as a state, will no longer be subtle. It's time for the election pain. So how many times we have to tell you, we're here for the long game. So we're channeling those who have laid the path, showing us what the long game looks like, never giving up, staying forward tough. Our postcard writers, with every stroke, you win. You've been there for the long game. Our canvassing folks, you walk the path, smiling, assuring you're built to last. You're here for the long game. Our candidates, you summoned Harriet Tubman. You lead us, left no one behind. Thank you for giving up yourself, your time. You are the long game. Our voters, you come through year after year, no matter what. You are the heart of this. You're the reason again why we rise, persist. So in the words of Shirley Chisholm, we will be unbought and unbossed today, tomorrow, and forever. Now let us all proclaim, we are here for the long game.
Hey. Wow, that's a way to fire us up. We're going to play that, I don't know, over and over. We are here for the long game. I'm bossed. I love it. So I'm just going to turn it over. Thank you very much, my friend, for that wonderful tribute to everybody in this room, every person that's worked their butt off for this.
Can I plug my show? Can I plug my show before I leave? All right. If Robin can just put up the poster, you guys, thank you so much. As I said before, I do personalized poems. I have a show coming up the end of the month, which is going to be actually on February the 26th. It's called Her Story, and it's a poetic journey of love, social justice, and empowerment. So it's going to be at the Lyceum in downtown Alexandria. And once again, it's going to be on February 26th. And I think Robin has put the link in the chat. Robin, is it in the chat?
Yes.
Excellent. So you guys click on there, go to Eventbrite. If you like what you heard today, imagine what I do. This is a part of my third album. I have a third album coming out, so come out and see it. So
I love it because I remembered we are all going. I think that's right in Alexandria. That's
there we go.
That looks good. We are going.
Yes.
Get your ticket. I'm boss.
All right,
love
come
it.
see me. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for what you do, my friend. All right. I'm going to, see you soon. We're all fired up now. All right, let's turn it over. Jaleesa Ward, Show Dazzler. I'm so excited for the next segment. Let's do it, everybody. Thank you
so much, Catherine. Well, listen, everyone, happy Black History Month to everyone. Black History Month is an annual celebration of achievements by African Americans and a time of recognizing their central role in U.S. history. And as we begin to celebrate our Black heroes, we can't ignore the simple fact that every time Black communities get ahead, we experience extreme setbacks. Racism and division, it's here. We can't ignore it, and we have to fight back. And this is why we welcome Dr. Wes Bellamy, author of When White Supremacy Knocks, Fight Back, co-chair of Our Black Party, and political science chair and professor at Virginia State University, who will challenge us to examine privilege and harness power to fight back against white supremacy. So thank you, Dr. Wes Bellamy, for joining us today. We truly appreciate you giving us your time. And listen, we can get straight into it. You wrote a book called When White Supremacy Knocks, Fight Back. Talk to us about that. What inspired you to write that, and what really is that all about?
Well, one, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm elated to be here with such powerful and dynamic ladies. Ms. Ward, I really appreciate the invitation. Shout out and kudos to all of your team, Robin, Catherine, Louisa, Heidi, everybody. Much love to all of y'all. And then also, I'd be remiss if I didn't show some special love to my sisters who will be coming on after me. My dearest sister, Adele McClure, delegate, soon to be delegate, Adele McClure, and forever my governor / senator / delegate, JCF, Jennifer Carroll Foy. I'm honored to know such powerful and strong Black women who've always been there for me, so I support them in everything in which they do. So with that being said, with the salutations out the way, honestly, I'm often asked the question, well, Wes, what do I do? Specifically from white people, Black people ask me that often as well. How do I get engaged? What do I do in terms of creating sustainable and tangible change? And we wanted to write this book as a guide, if you will. It has 10 chapters within it, and each chapter starts with a story, whether that be from my time serving as vice mayor in Charlottesville, Virginia, or just things in which I've endured growing up as a Black man in America, for that matter, and just kind of some of the lessons in which I've learned. The first chapter kind of talks about the first time in which I was called the N-word, and it was actually during a police stop. And a police officer in Georgia, in Atlanta, where I'm from, pulled me over, accused me of selling drugs, and this was on my way back to driving to college. And I remember there was a younger officer who drove up to try to serve as backup, and he wanted to intervene. He wanted to help. He wanted to do something. I saw it on his face. And as I'm a 19-year-old, kind of just saying to the cop, don't do this. It's literally the day after Martin Luther King Day. I'm just going back to school. He tells me to shut up and that he's going to throw me in cuffs and whatnot. And kind of the younger officer, he wanted to intervene, but he didn't know how. And I think that's kind of the basis of this book. For white people, when you have power, how do you utilize it to bring forth change? Is it describing how you are developing the courage to be able to stand up in moments like that? Or is it on a more subtle level, on a day-by-day basis? Do you interact and step in and intervene in systems that are having a horrible or bad impact on people of color, specifically Black folk, in our day-to-day initiatives? And then for Black folk, how do we utilize our power? I think oftentimes we believe that we don't have power due to the systems that are currently in place, but there is room for us to utilize and recognize the leverage in which we have to be able to bring forth tangible change. So that's the basis of the book, and I hope you all will pick up a copy. I'm doing signed copies. I have 50 signed copies for anybody who hit me up on IG or hit me up on Twitter, and I'll send you a signed copy to you tomorrow.
Yeah,
yeah. We're announcing that later today. It's a new cover. I made a few different editions, so you can hit me up and I get you a signed copy. And we'll go.
Well, I truly appreciate that. And listen, you are co-chair of Our Black Party. And so, I watched it. I've seen the video where you talk about, you say, before you were Democrat, before you were liberal, before you were independent, before you were Republican, you were Black, right? And you talk about identifying yourself, but prior to politics, you are a human being. This is your identity. This is your culture. So it really spoke to me about the work that I'm doing. And so talk to us about, Our Black Party and the Black agenda, because we want to make sure that our progressive and democratic and liberal leaders know how to include the Black agenda moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. So I think it's important for us to understand that, again, as we talk about, and as you alluded to, for Black folks specifically, before you were Republican, Democrat, Independent, you were Black. And there's nothing wrong with Black folk owning our politics. There's nothing wrong with us showing up in our most authentic selves and stating that we need to advocate for policies that are advantageous for us specifically. That doesn't mean that we hate others, and it doesn't mean that we don't get along or have respect for other people. But again, there's nothing wrong with us saying that we have to do for ourselves in order for us to be able to move forward. And for those reasons, it's important for us to develop a platform like Our Black Party. What we're looking to do across the country, we're right now in 12 different states, but what we're looking to do is not only politically train folks on the ground and kind of meet the streets in activism, if you will, but also educate people on how these systems currently work. When you have candidates like Adele and JCF who are running for office on different state levels, there's an education that needs to go on in terms of breaking down on a very granular level how these things work. And you're not necessarily complaining to them for something that may be a local issue. So we're describing and talking about those things. You don't necessarily complain to your state senator or state delegate about why the principal at your children's elementary school is making everybody wear green shirts or have new cafeteria food. So, it's the education process in that regard, but also being very bold in our stance that we are going to mobilize and hold individuals accountable for the actions in which they take. And again, there's nothing absolutely wrong with us taking that stance. And we encourage our allies and our accomplices to join with us in this fight for equity. I know it's kind of a trendy word now, but it's one that we all have to be willing to take heed to and truly move forward in a spirit and love of equity, real equity, not the faux kind in which we just talk about, but the kind that allows us to utilize our actions to bring forth, again, very tangible change.
Right, which is so powerful. And we're really grateful for the work that you're doing with Our Black Party. And, we want to make sure that the Black agenda is clear, not only for our Black communities, but for our, like I said, progressive leaders who are, we want to make sure that they're leading, in priority with the Black agenda moving forward. I think that's the change that we all need to seek as far as creating that sense of unity amongst us. So we know that the work that you're doing is creating that for us. And that's why we are so grateful for it and grateful for you being here, sharing that with us, because it's really, really important and powerful. And, there's nothing wrong with standing for it, so we really respect the work that you're doing. I also seen, and I'm just saying, I've just been watching you, right? But since I'm like, I've seen, but no, you have this show, I think Power and Privilege, if I'm not mistaken. I watched both episodes that you've recently filmed. Powerhouse, the first guest that you had on, I think he was an NFL player,
Chris
if I'm
Long.
not mistaken.
Shout out to my man, Chris Long, a two-time NFL Super Bowl champion.
Two-time NFL, and you had him on the show. So definitely congratulations to your show, Power and Privilege. And talk to us a little bit about Power and Privilege. Is it Privilege and Power, or Power and Privilege?
They're interchangeable, and to a certain extent, they're a play on the book. Privilege and power and privilege. But again, it's about how do we utilize the privilege that we have, like and for Chris, who is an individual who, for many who may remember, during the time of the protest with Colin Kaepernick and Malcolm Jenkins and others, Chris stood side by side with many of those players. He put his arm around their shoulders, and also has been a very bold and advocate and accomplice in many regards, speaking up on the needs and inequities in which we've seen. So I just talked to him about why it's important for him to speak up on those things, how he got involved and engaged, but understanding that he has a great deal of privilege within that. I mean, the guy's a millionaire. The guy comes from a family of privilege. His father is a Hall of Famer. And he's a white male who understands that he has that privilege, so he has to use it in order to bring forth tangible change. The recent episode that we had that released yesterday, What to Do with Grandma's House, kind of addresses some of the things in which we're talking about revolving around generational wealth, and then specifically for Black folk and lower income communities, not necessarily selling your house to the first person who comes by, and as we talked about them and called them cardboard sellers, and say, hey, we'll buy your house for a small amount of cash, and they do the flip, they do the renovations, they make the income off of it, and then sell it to someone else. And then you see our neighborhoods become gentrified. So different ways in which we can fight back against that. It's important for localities and local elections to play a role. When I was serving in office, we created a grant program for those who fall below a certain tax threshold or income threshold for us to, as a city, to provide tax relief for them. And we'll pick up some of the tax bill. So it's different things in which we can do, again, that we discussed throughout the episode. But can I say something really quick?
No, yeah, absolutely. We have time. So look, we're opening up. Definitely.
Thank you. You said something that I thought was really interesting, specifically when we talk about unity, which I am all for. But I like to pose a question to everyone who's here listening. You think back to a time in which America as a whole has ever been unified. And for me, in my personal estimation, I talk to this with my students or our scholars all the time. The answer in my personal estimation is no, we haven't been built on unity. This country has always had a group of individuals who believed that they were superior to another group. And even in times in which when we could think about, when I pose this question, folks will say, well, 9/11, America was unified, but not if you were a brown person who wore a turban, not if you were an individual who had a different faith that was different from what some may seem as the quote unquote mainstream faith. So because of that fact, this focus and emphasis on us being all unified and all being on the same page is a fallacy. And I don't believe in us working to be completely unified, because there are some individuals who I wouldn't want to serve in unison with. Those individuals who have distinct obligations or objections to who I am as an individual in terms of fighting for equity. I don't want to fight, and I don't want to stand in unison with them. But what I do want to do is continue to make our communities better on a day-by-day basis. And I believe that each of us can do that on our own perspective, using our own skills, using the God-given talents that have been provided to each and every single one of us. And instead of fighting for this mantra that's kind of like a pie in the sky, let's just do the very simple things of making our communities better. It doesn't mean leading a 10,000 person march or having some grandiose program or a podcast or anything of that nature. Let's just do our part. It's not looking for grandiose unity. It's just looking for us to have some kind of collaboration to make things better. And I think if we do that, then we'll see a more perfect union as some of our forefathers aspired to create.
Right. So you're saying it's the small act, because my next question that was going to lead into is what we can do to collectively create a better future and a positive, and fundamental change for all of us. So you're saying it's not the big acts, it's not the leading ahead of a 10,000, march. It's the small individual acts that we can all do within our communities.
Right. For sure. I think, those difficult conversations when we're at Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner with that cousin of yours or that favorite auntie of yours who says the racist comment or the homophobic comment or the thing that we know doesn't represent the values of the persons who we want to be, are we willing to challenge them? Are we willing to provide them with the book or some literature or some research that shows why what you believe is not in tune with who we want our community to be? It's going the extra mile in terms of making the sacrifice to tutor that kid who may have hair growing out of their head, who may use very choice language, who may dress a little different, who has parts in their head like I do and wears chains and whatnot. Are we willing to engage with that individual to spend some time to be able to get them to where they need to be? And see, I think those kind of things, although, may be difficult and although may ask us to get outside of our comfort zone, those are the things that really change our communities on a day-to-day basis. It's part of the reason why I try to be intentional and showing up as my most authentic self, regardless of where I want to be, because this is truly who I am. So how do we get rid of some of our white supremacist modes of thinking? This goes for white people and black people and people of color as a whole, because white supremacy has ingratiated within all of us. How do we not see things for what we believe that they are, but aspire to get them to where we want them to be? That requires a philosophical shift, as well as grace, as well as patience, but most importantly, sacrifice for us to be able to, again, create this change that we're looking for.
Right. So powerful. Listen, Dr. West, we're just so grateful to have this conversation. I think a big first step of the change that we are fundamentally seeking as a democracy is this conversation that we're having right now, right here. And for everybody that works a part of this show being that foundation and system to talk about our stories and share our Black stories and, have these conversations about what we can do collectively to move forward. And we all bring a lot to the table. So it's really about awakening the power inside of all of us, right? And it is the small acts. And that's a huge awakening that you said that even for me to realize that, I'm always go big, go, and so you're just not even realizing it's actually the small things, a dinner table conversation with our families, as far as not being complicit, right? Doing our part. And that's just really powerful. Look, I mean, we could probably sit here and talk about this all day. I'm serious. Like, it's Black History Month, and these are like I said, these are the conversations that we have to break ground in if we want to move forward collectively together. So, but what's next for you? I know you have a scholarship that you just started. Talk to us about what you have coming next. That way we can make sure that we're contributing to, to what you're planning and your contributions within historically Black colleges and within the Black communities. We want to make sure that we're supporting that as well. So what do you have coming up?
Yeah, sure. I appreciate, again, the time. A few friends and I, we just launched a historically Black college, Black Excellence Scholarship Foundation, in which we're looking to raise $50,000 for the 5 Virginia HBCUs. We have our gala that'll be taking place on April 10th, as well as our fun run in Richmond that'll be taking place on April 11th. So the goal, again, is to raise $50,000 for our 5 Virginia HBCUs, and then we'll also provide $1,000 scholarships to high school students who are attending HBCUs, as well as current collegiate students who are attending the schools. And again, what we're looking to do is provide just some resources for them and give back with our time, our talent, and our treasures. I'm working on another book, Do You Fear Me? America's Anxiety with Bold Black Leadership. So that'll be coming out hopefully the end of the year. Just purchased a couple of laundromats. So, we're working on that and building some economic wealth. And the podcast, you all please feel free to check it out on YouTube or Channel 154 Productions. It's called Privilege and Power. And I see some folks in the comments saying they're getting the books. That's great. You can get them on Amazon. But what I'm saying also is the current book, When White Supremacy Knocks, Fight Back, I have hard copies at home that I'll be sending out to folks. So if you just send me a message on Instagram at Dr. Wes Bellamy, we'll work it out, and then I'll send you your own personal signed copy. I can't get you a signed copy off Amazon right now, but we're getting there. And then last but not least, man, just supporting folks like yourself, supporting folks like Adele, supporting folks like Senator Carol Foy, and making sure that we're using our voice to be able to do everything in which we can to make our communities a better place. And I appreciate the time and the platform, and I'm happy to serve.
Yeah.
And happy to help.
You're not going anywhere, Wes. Is there some kind of feedback? Robin, I keep hearing weird feedback. Is that just me? All right. Well, so, Jaleesa, let's stay in the room here together. I think we just build on this power, bring up Jennifer Carol Foy into this conversation, and let's bring up Adele. Let's all get into our group huddle and let's talk, because you brought up some really great points in this conversation. And I'd like to, and we have 2 candidates running. And why I think it's so important is, Wes, you talk about language. And we've been talking about, like, how do we handle all this what's going on is really super dangerous. We see censorship, we see all this, the bills landing down in the legislature that are really censoring free speech, attacking really our teachers, the system we have, the bedrock of education and voting rights. So I like to just we'll come back. I want to talk to both Jennifer and Adele, and then I like to circle back as a group and talk about really how we can talk about that, what we can do about it. So I'm very excited to open it up with Jennifer. And like I said, I really feel like looking at our history, we need to know it because we see this isn't new, this attack on our democracy, voting rights, using race, and it's a power of white supremacy, as Wes said. And it's knocking at the door again. And how are you going to answer that door, Jennifer? Are you ready? What are you seeing? You saw this election. I mean, let's just get at it.
Absolutely. So I enjoy having uncomfortable conversations. I'm not willing and ready to walk through the door. I'm ready to kick it in because at the end of the day, you know, we can all talk about what it is and what's happening, but critical race theory has attacked our democracy and was used and weaponized as a way to actually be successful this last election cycle. And it's not enough to just say what it is and that, you know, it teaches that racism is baked into our systems and our structures of American society, that it's taught mainly only in law school, that we can't learn about disparities and how it's rooted in discrimination without having these conversations. And to just say that it's not being taught is not enough. We saw that this last election cycle. But what's really happening is that the critical race conversation is really a hoax, and it's a disinformation campaign that's been perpetuated by the Koch brothers, because we know that the key word in critical race theory is race. And race has been weaponized, weaponizing racial resentment and packaging it as education. And that's what's really happened. And we have to unpack that and talk about it and lean all the way in and not just distance ourselves from it and ignore it. Listen, Donald Trump wrote the playbook on how to mobilize racial animus for political gain, and he was successful. So why wouldn't the Republicans continue to use that as a weapon against us? But as Democrats, we have to learn to challenge racist propaganda, not to ignore, to run from it, and not to further perpetuate it in our talking points and what we say. You know, there's things that Republicans do well and Democrats have opportunity, and that is messaging. And the Republicans are right on with this critical race theory, and we have to respond accordingly. So we have to come at it and say things like, of course, we believe that parents should have a say in their child's education. That's why we have democratically elected school boards and PTAs and parent-teacher conferences. And we should reframe the question when people say, well, what about critical race theory? Do you agree with it? Not accept the Republican premise that we teach critical race theory. The question is and should be, do you believe that we should teach accurate, complete, and age-appropriate history? That is the question. And the answer, of course, is unequivocally yes, because I trust our educators to create good curriculum with input from parents. I trust our children who are smart and resilient. We cannot and should not shield them from the truth. And we want them to be critical thinkers and have to learn about all of our history, not just Black history, not just Asian American history, Indigenous people history. It's American history. It is all together. And I think that's where we are. And once we start leaning into those conversations, then we can own back our power and not run away from these things and actually use it as a tool to educate and uplift others. But these are the conversations we have to have, and we just can't run away from it.
No, I agree. And it makes me think, when I think about what Wes said, is this structure that's really baked in that and the history, if we're really a student of history, we understand it. And I really think sometimes when you're having those conversations, like you said, Wes, about you using your privilege or your power and all that, is really also understanding what this is to be able to name it. And when you really talk to people and get into really kind of just show what's really happening, talk about voter suppression, talk about, you know, the history of it, it sort of then gets people open to talk. But I think if you go right at people using certain words, and I love to talk about this after Adele, when we use words like white privilege, a lot of people shut down. They don't know what it means. They're not educated yet. And I don't mean that in a negative way. They just don't know. So they just feel right away insulted to some degree. They're not really sure what that means. White people are like, whoa, what is that? I'm not privileged. I was poor. We need, you know, so I would like us to talk about eventually that language shift that we could bring people along. And like you said, with messaging. So I'd like to toss it over to Adele, listening to everything you have. I mean, from the Virginia Black Caucus, Legislative Black Caucus, what is your lens on this, and also as a candidate?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. And I'm happy to be speaking with y'all during Black History Month. And also following yesterday's date in 1870 was the date that the 15th Amendment was ratified to the U.S. Constitution. And that was granting Black men the right to vote and participate in our democracy. And the fight and struggle for access continues and has continued for decades since then. And along the way, our society has seen disenfranchisement through poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses, violence, voter ID laws, and other restrictive measures. And then when Dems won the majority in the last 2 years, with bills championed by members of the Legislative Black Caucus, we have our former member, VLBC member, former delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy on here, and just appreciate the work that they've done to expand access by making election a holiday, allowing for Sunday voting, repealing voter ID laws, the creation of drop box locations, Voting Rights Act of Virginia, and so much more. And so I've been proud as executive director to help get these measures passed, and then also to help implement them as an assistant chief election officer in my community, working the polls and making sure folks are able to vote fairly and safely. And so there are a number of Republican bills that were filed. Many of y'all have seen them. They're both in the House and the Senate. They seek to overturn all of the progress that we've been making to expand access to the ballot box. And it's not surprising because there is a history of this, right? And they are working to further restrict access to voting even more. And so I've seen firsthand the impact that restrictive measures have had on voters. We cannot go back. We must continue to stand united. I feel like a lot of this won't get passed because there were a lot of bills that were filed in the Senate killed immediately. The Dems over there are united. We have Black Caucus members up there standing up against it. And then on the House side, you're going to see some pass out of committee and then pass on the floor. But what you will see is my members and a lot of other folks standing up, speaking out against those restrictive measures. And then once they arrive in the Senate, they are dead on arrival. And so we are doing everything we can to make sure that we don't roll back and then continue to work to disenfranchise voters and restrict access. And so a lot of the action steps that need to happen now, and I'll try to get everybody a list of bill numbers, is just having people testify in committee against these Republican bills to restrict access, helping to raise awareness around a lot of this stuff because although we know about it, a lot of folks don't know that this is happening, and it's happening in a huge wave. And so we just gotta, if you can help us to flag bad bills that you see that you want to oppose, let us know what more we can do to build upon expanding access, flagging anything that happens on the local level, become an election officer. I've seen a lot of things happen as an election officer that I've been able to then bring to members or other folks to file bills and further expand access. So, let us know what you can do there. And, lots more I've seen on education too. We're here in Black History Month and the governor put out a whole press release acknowledging Black History Month. And then at the same time working to remove teachings by putting out that EO on the moment he was sworn in, and then using a tip line to report teachers and threaten academic freedom. And so I'm angry, and it's been spoken about here, I'm just angry about the revisionist history that I learned about Reconstruction and the women's suffrage movement, and the history that I did not learn about Ida B. Wells, about the many Black women activists who had their voices silenced during the movement. And, as former delegate Carol Foy mentioned, this history is American history. It is Virginia history. And we have to do everything we can to make sure that it not only stays in our classrooms, but that we learn the revisionist history that was, there was a whole effort to push it through into our textbooks. So we have to make sure that we teach the true history that was purposely erased and hidden from us.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I know Jalise said our minds are like going 100 miles per hour because there's so much here. I
just drop the mic.
Drop the mic on that.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I'm always talking about is that Black history is American history. Stand 10 toes down on that. Say that with your chest because it's the truth. And, at the end of the day, history is made to learn from so it doesn't repeat itself. The more you continue to hide from it, the more you're going to continue to see it repeat itself. The level of ignorance, it definitely is time to fight back. And that's why these conversations are so, so important, So thank you guys for the work that you're doing. I'm going to give it over to you, Catherine, to see if you have
Yeah,
anything.
sure. I really want to get into like a little of the structure of it so we can return to we talked about the power, and I think getting into, I'm really, really interested. I think a lot of people are here to really learn about how to use this language, how to talk about it. I know a lot of people now are standing up to help their public schools defend that, because really in the end, I think it's always good for us, because if we're informed, like Adele, you said, if we understand our history and not the clouded view that I learned too about women's suffrage. I had no clue about that, what happened. And so you can become enlightened in every part of your life, right? I mean, this is good for us to learn. So once we learn this full history, and then understanding, like, as candidates and people, and there's parents now that are angry about the snitch lines and all this stuff, they finally woke up. I don't know where they were during the election, that they didn't see the red vested guy that was the George Wallace, Jim Crow bringing it, but we're awake now. Okay, now we know. Now, how do we work together? I like this idea of the group, the white power, the Black power, white privilege. But the word with white privilege, I feel like people, we need to be able to understand how to talk to people about this language, because I think just in my own personal life, trying to talk to other people about it, they just eventually just position in that they don't understand that they have this privilege, and you really have to do a lot of work around it. So changing, is this like, and using the politics of kind of love around this too, once we come together. So what is your thoughts on that? Like how, the language, the messaging, how to really be able to talk about this so voters understand it, everybody understands it. Anybody have some comments on that?
Well, I think there's multiple approaches. There's no one size fit all for this. And I kind of live by a quote: you have to be patient with people, but impatient with progress. Everyone needs to be afforded a level of grace. You can look back when I was 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. I said some of the craziest things you can think of on Twitter, things that are, absolutely crazy. And I'm 35 years old now, right? So I thank God that the city that I live in, the city of Charlottesville, grew up with me, as well as afforded me a level of grace, but also allowed me, they were patient with me to allow me to be able to grow. And I think that none of us should live in a mantra in which we can condemn others or judge persons in a way in which we completely write them off. Like, I don't believe in writing anybody off. That may even sound crazy. Even a white supremacist, I believe in some regards, if they're willing to do the work. Now, it may not be me that's there to teach them to do the work, but I do believe that we have to hold space in some regards for people to be able to come around. So that's where the patience comes along. This is also where I believe that for white people, specifically when you're talking to your other white colleagues, it is important for you to be able to speak to their quote unquote love language. If these are your friends, you understand how they receive information. If it's through reading, then offer a suggestion of a book. If it's through listening, then offer maybe a suggestion of podcasts. If it's through data, then provide some data points. If it's through conversation, then just being steadfast and being calm when you're speaking, and maybe having multiple conversations to get them to where they need to be. But again, this is a multifaceted approach in terms of educating people in terms of where they need to be. From a Black person's perspective, I do believe that, this is not popular, but I do believe that there is a level of responsibility for some of us, maybe not all of us, but for some of us, to be patient and also educate others. That's part of why we wrote the book. But I also have no qualms, and I completely understand why some people are tired and sick and tired of being sick and tired of trying to educate people or having these conversations. And for those individuals, I encourage and I implore them to continue to push forward. And then lastly, from a male perspective, I have to recognize my privilege and in all instances, try to do my best to uplift different sisters and different women. And that's why I'm so proud to be on, with these two superstars, JCF and Adele, because I owe them the world. And for my daughters, I'm glad to see them pushing, because they provide examples for the people who I want my youngins to grow and to be.
Yeah, no doubt. So I don't know if you guys, Adele, Jennifer, have any follow up with that. It's on your mind. Want to jump in? And the sense of, like, we're getting up to the hour, so I'd really like to wrap up. And we have the after chat, so I hope you would stick around. But really get into the people listening, actions we can take. Wes had some actions there, or just some last thoughts. And one thing too, like I said, when parents now and citizens are now kind of waking up to this, you see that they are trying to find places to get involved, right? And I have to bring up, because I just really am a firm believer, especially somebody went to VMI and some of our historic institutions, just how this racism is baked in there. And that the power is to separate us. And it's actually, of knowing history, how they bake that into the laws. And so they always wanted to make sure that one group was down, one group was up. And if you look at, the Black history, our history about this, intentionally, it was to keep us kind of separated. So once that they knew that we went together and worked, the working class or a certain class of people, that we would be unstoppable. So it's always been important for the powers that be to keep us separated, right?
Yeah, I would just add two quick things to that, because I know we're running on time. It was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. who said that he hopes the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit at the table together of brotherhood, meaning that we all have to come together. We all have a part in this, in finding the solutions and the language and fighting back against, racism, discrimination, bigotry, wherever it may lay. But then I also, because we have two candidates and the fabulous Dr. Wes Bellamy on this call, I also want to bring up something that's very prevalent and I want to address because we have this platform. We have to get used to having multiple people of color running for office. That is going to be our new normal. And one way to move the ball forward, to have more productive policies that's passed that'll address a lot of the inequities in our system, is to say, it doesn't just have to be one of you. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, oh, there's 2-3 Black people running, there's too many, right? And I have to say that in and of itself, underlines and skirts racism, because what you're saying is there can only be one of you. There's only space for one African American. And that's not true. That is the crab in the barrel mentality. That's where it roots from. But let me be clear, that didn't just come from, Caucasian people, it came from African Americans as well. And it's something that's very disappointing, because I hope that we move into a future where there's 5, 6, 9 African Americans, Hispanics, Indigenous people, all running in races, all in primaries, to move the ball forward and improve our democracy. And that's where we should be moving to. So I just want to make everyone aware that that's something that's very, very important, and a sentiment that I've heard a lot. We have to be very careful in our language, even as Democrats, when we're talking about who we're going to support, how we're going to support them, and who are we going to allow into levels of power.
Adele.
Yeah, I just echo what was said here with Dr. Wes Bellamy talking about identifying that love language and then finding ways to persuade people and to show them perspectives that they may have been insulated against, right? Like they didn't grow up in that specific environment, or were in segregated environments, right? And so just making sure that you are identifying, what it is exactly that is keeping them from seeing that perspective, right? So I like that you brought up love language, and then taking that approach. And then JCF, I absolutely agree. I feel like, and that's not just in running for office, right? That's in many different places. That's in corporate environment. That's everywhere, where a lot of people, there's like this whole racist trope of pitting minority communities against one another as well, while saying, hey, we already have these minorities here, therefore your existence or presence threatens that. And then that creates that, like I said, perpetuates that trope of pitting folks against one another, and letting people feel like there isn't space. And so we have got to address that narrative. We've got to make sure that we are looking within and making sure that we're not perpetuating that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, you see this fight to shut down voting, to shut people out. So all across the nation, and that means something. It's really a fight for power. And, I think we staying in the space, keeping to talk about it, having ways that we can work together, because it's as we said, it's in troubled times, but if we stay together, we can make good trouble. So I want to thank, we're up on the hour. We have a few things we'd like to do before we go to after chat. So I just want to say first, before I do the next run of commercial here, is Dr. Bellamy, Jennifer Carroll Foy, Adele McClure, thank you so much. And Jaleesa Ward, of course, co-conspirator in this great show. Thank you for being here, and please stick around if you have the time. I'm sure people want to get more deep in this. We go to the after chat and it's really it's really fun. So thank you so much. We'll do a little business and then we'll get to the after chat. So I just want to thank you for this great conversation, everybody in the room. And Robin, we always like to, what a great conversation, I have to say. And we want to make sure that we continue doing great things. So we have a little bit of what we call a show commercial, because we are still looking for content concierge to help us with some of the stuff on the show. So if you are interested in helping with us, we would love to have you. And it's just to deal with some of the things that we need from the chat and content, articles, proofreading. And we shout out to Jessica Peterson. She has been helping us, and that's been fantastic. So thank you for that. Contact Robin, send something in the chat, and we would always love the help, because as you see, we do a lot of stuff. All right. And don't forget, tomorrow's the workshop, and sign up for that. And we have some, let's add some fun. Where the heck did I put my hat? It's wintertime, and we still have these awesome, when we vote, we win hats. So you can see we have them. We'll put the link in the chat. Oh, Stair has her hat on. Let's see, Stair. Stair, look at that. Yeah, you look good. You look OG. I love it. Okay. So I have to say, my husband loves these hats. This is what he sleeps in. Just a hat, as I say, keeps the bed warm. And hats are, so thank you. If you want to support us, we need to get rid of our lovely hats, but they're so much fun. And also, end of the show, become a patron of the show. If you like what you're seeing, follow us on Twitter and all the links, and we will have the recap of the show, and the links will be in the chat for any other, you could actually drop any links, Dr. Bellamy or anybody, to any of your events. Make sure you save the date for February 26th with Tammarrah Addison for her great play. And I think we're at the final thank you. All right. So why don't we run credits and stay for the after chat, and let's work together. Let's make the world a better place.